At Esther Finance, we believe money should move more differently, more human, more connected, and within reach for everyone. But this isn't just about loans or numbers. This is about people and what happens when they try to move forward, and what also happens when someone decides to build a bridge rather than a barrier. This is where finance meets empathy, and this is the story we're telling. Hi, Javette.
Right.
So let's begin. What sparked the idea for Esther Finance?
In many ways, Esther came out upon global. And I think it still reflects what Point Global was always about. So, 15 years ago when Point Global was started, we started with the idea of supporting emerging businesses. And we've been doing it for the last 15 years through providing marketing and go-to-market strategies for these businesses. As everybody would know, in 2019, we had a global pandemic. And in that global pandemic, a lot of the businesses that we were supporting had strong financial challenges. We ourselves saw a 40% reduction in revenues from client activity. And I think a lot of other businesses, particularly consumer-facing businesses, had the same realities. Now, as a business and Point Global, going back to our core value, we have to ask ourselves, what do we do? Do we abandon our mission of assisting emerging businesses, or do we find alternative approaches to allowing them to execute what they wanted to do? And that's kind of the genesis of Esther. It is, how do we support, in a way, the natural evolution of what we're doing at Point Global. How do we support businesses, emerging businesses, in a practical way to help them to be able to see where they want to go? Point Global does that from a marketing and an advisory standpoint. Esther takes that a little bit further, and really tries to play a part in the emerging capital and venture space in Jamaica and the Caribbean. And that it's so in a real way, Esther was a natural evolution of the work that we were already doing for Point Global around supporting emerging businesses.
So you also spoke on core values. So what are the core values behind Esther?
Community, empathy, recognizing that when it comes down to particular entrepreneurs, it's beyond just the numbers. They have a compelling why. And as a result of that, they need to be supported. The recognition that capital is an important way for businesses to grow. If you look at, if you understand the entrepreneurial ecosystem in Jamaica, and if you look at some of the statistics, Jamaica has one of the highest rates of business formation in the world. However, those businesses, we also have one of the highest rate of failure of business in the world. And if you kind of look at and you measure this over time, you realize that a big part of that is capital adequacy. So in many ways, and this is across the Caribbean, you have great businesses that are undercapitalized. They're undercapitalized and they're participating in a capital market that do not recognize their ability to progress. So we have a banking system that is very rigid. We have a credit access system that is rigid. And we have an ability to, and failure is not seen in the same way. If or the way that we deal with failure doesn't lend itself to people wanting to try. Because in many ways it's almost this thing like failure is final, and you get in business you fail a lot, you make a lot of mistakes, you adjust, and you need support. So this is the reality of not just Jamaica but the Caribbean environment, and it is the reality that Point Global and Esther is kind of most pushing and trying to solve. It is recognizing that venturing, and when I say venturing, I'm talking about venture capital and capital space, is something that can develop in the Caribbean as well. It's a recognition that maybe the way to do that is through private credit or peer-to-peer transactions, where the parties are more knowledgeable of each other, where the parties are more knowledgeable about the problem that they're solving. And it's a recognition that we have to innovate the services that we provide to emerging businesses. We have to innovate in the way that we do it for the Caribbean environment. We can't take an approach like, um, it's a unicorn in Silicon Valley or in Shenzhen where in China where government support is such a big thing. The capital space in the Caribbean has to develop differently. But so that kind of important characteristic about how we're building, who we are serving, and the core values around community is the way we think we're able to do that. So really, we say humanizing lending as the kind of tagline moniker for Esther, but it's actually beyond that. It's a recognition that communities actually do finance better. If you think about the partner plan in Jamaica, that's everybody in Jamaica, especially people from rural Jamaica, would understand it as a feature of the Jamaican society.
Yep.
And those work well, particularly around small groups, particularly around women. Women tend to be like the kind of bedrock of the partner system in Jamaica. And now, what is it that we can understand about that innovation? That innovation works because the people are involved usually know each other. So they are able they know if you are a responsible person to lend money to within a community. We see it happen with things like round robin as well in the urban areas. So Jamaica has all of these innovations around capital markets that people don't recognize as capital markets, or venturing that people don't recognize as venture capital. Now, how do we build systems that develop, use technologies that enhance this, and then bring that innovation to scale and to impact the financial system that we're operating in? And that's the core around Esther. It's around recognizing that we cannot wholesale import systems that are outside of our Caribbean and outside of our Caribbean realities and expect them to operate in the same way. We have to kind of figure out capital systems that help our entrepreneurs grow, while using world-class technology and while building out world-class systems to innovate around. So those, I hope I specifically answered the question around core value, but I think the most important thing is around the fact that innovation has to be homegrown, the fact that communities are an important part of innovation, and we think that if you look at what you see as the biggest thing that inhibits that in the Caribbean is around trust. It's around how do we implement community? How do we go beyond just the numbers and the ratios, but actually addressing people? And those are kind of core to what we're building at Esther.
We know why you chose the name Esther.
Yes.
But I think it'd be good to share with everybody, why did you choose the name Esther and what made you run with it?
So if you know my business story, you know how important my mother is to my business story.
Yeah.
Why you ask that question? Yeah. So my mother is extremely important to my overall business journey.
Yeah.
So currently, Point Global, most people would know Point Global.
Yeah.
Point Global is the largest of the family of companies that we operate now. Most people would have either seen me speak at a conference related to Point Global, but there are actually two other businesses that are tangential to Point Global, which is Bucket Platforms Limited, which my mother actually runs now. But my mother's name is Esther. And my mother inspired me to start Point Global. When I was thinking about Esther and what that should look like, she was already a part of Bucket Platforms Limited and helping to that to take shape. And I felt it was a way to honor her.
Yeah.
And it actually represents everything that she represents: community,
Mhm.
helping people, and recognizing that regardless of where you're starting, there if you bring innovation to that, if you bring meaning to it, you can actually grow and expand and scale. So as a result, Esther Finance, Esther Ventures
Yeah.
was started.
I believe you touched on it in the previous question, but what problems are you exactly trying to solve with this?
When I talk about finance, I like to look at it from a Caribbean perspective because in broad terms, the Caribbean is actually a very small market. The English-speaking Caribbean is probably around estimates range from 16 million. If you add in some of the other population, you'll probably bump it up to 25 million people. We put in like dom rep and stuff like that. But the Caribbean, and I think a lot of the dom rep tends to do a lot more business with Latin America, stuff like that. Haiti, we understand what's happening with the Haitian situation. But the Caribbean is a relatively small market. It's not even a big state. It's not even a mega city compared to some of the mega cities like Tokyo and stuff like that around the world. But we're geographically in a very advantageous position where we're located. We're geographically advantageous for air traffic, and we're also geographically advantageous because we have a diverse population that come from all over the world. India, African descendants, European. We're a melting pot. But also that melting pot has given itself over to a really strong um, financial system. But that financial system is not designed fully with the socio-cultural realities of the average Caribbean citizen in mind. So that financial system is a very developed, performed at a very high level, but for very big, very well understood transactions. Now, when you combine that with a situation where the world is going into decentralized finance, when the world is going into heavier use of crypto technology and cryptographic technology, the world is going heavier into what is deemed as private credit because large multinational institutions are innovating in how they support subsidiaries, how they support their own businesses. And all of that is leading to what you can look at as monopolistic competition. So if you're big and if you're connected, you have access to large financial markets wherever you are. So the larger firms in Jamaica, they can go to the commercial banks, but they are also having internally systems that help their own cash and capital management and help them to grow. Now, if you're like me who started a business from scratch, that doesn't really exist, and most Caribbean people don't have the kind of inherent capital from before. I mean, like generational capital to say, okay, I'm going to use my personal resources to grow. You have to grow very slowly. So you only do that in a couple of ways. You either take on debt, meaning you can go to a commercial banking institution and take on what would be a consumer loan, because the banking institution will not lend to entrepreneurs if they're going and say, I'm starting something. So you're taking on a consumer loan, and invariably, the loan that you're taking on is never going to be enough to really actually achieve the goal of the enterprise that you're trying to build. So it takes a long time to build. Now, as a result of that kind of inherent structure of how our capital markets and our financial market is built, when you layer that with what is happening with technology, when you layer that with decentralized finance, when you layer that with crypto technology, you have to ask yourself, what is the financial space going to look like in 5 years? My hypothesis, and the reason why I started the Esther Finance, is because I feel like it's going to be very different. in a situation like the Caribbean, private credit becomes even more important than institutional lending. Or private individuals interface with the financial system, especially with the changes that you see taking place in the US, where just last week the US Congress passed a kind of Bitcoin legislation to kind of allow for stable coins and stuff like that to be a part of the US financial system. I think there are going to be fundamental shifts in how venturing is done in the US.
Yeah.
The importance of private individuals having private credit transactions. Even if you look at what's happening in the US now, private credit over the last 12 months has grown almost 40%, right? Now, so these are the trends that are driving our realities in Jamaica. Now, I see that as advantageous for a company like Esther. Um, One, Point Global has always been a technology first business, right? Point Global has always been a little bit out there on the edge of things from a marketing standpoint. We're one of the earlier people to say go hell bent on content and data and social media.
Yeah.
We're the first firms to kind of go, yeah man, this is a big thing. Social media is everything. This is why we did digital housing, the conference, and a lot of people that participated in that. So we've always been a little bit trying to push the curve of innovation. And so I say Esther has been really positioned for that and really driven around that. How do we use this wave of innovation that are taking place around crypto technology, around decentralized finance, and around private capital to actually impact peer-to-peer transaction for us? Yeah.
And you mentioned that it's difficult for new entrepreneurs to get funding from the banks and so. So I would assume that that's something that Esther would gravitate towards, meaning giving new entrepreneurs the financial ability to start. So I know a number of creatives who are looking to start their video editing business or their graphic design business, but they lack equipment. And the loan would basically be the stepping stone to getting the equipment and starting their business. So my question is, would that be one of the focus of Esther venture?
Yeah. So we haven't pulled out and said, okay, creative specifically, right? So it's not a situation where I say, okay, we're targeting creative specifically. Just to kind of take a step back to explain what the two problems that we're trying to solve. So we've created two segments for Esther. We have Esther Ventures.
Yep.
And Esther Ventures, strictly speaking, is an early stage angel investment fund. So literally, you're at an early stage in a business. We're a venture fund. So for a venture fund is looking for a return from the investment, right? That is one segment of our business. How we do that is for many of the businesses that we're working with, we're providing a small amount of cash and in-kind expertise. That in-kind expertise is this team. It is Christina writing on developing content ideas on your behalf. It is Akeem figuring out the brand strategy. It is you doing multimedia. It is us really coming in and being a part of the business and helping the business to scale. That is on the venture side. On the Esther Finance side, Esther is a peer-to-peer lending platform that is built around private credit accessibility through peer-to-peer lending. Now, what we're using is current technologies. So our phone captures a lot of data on us. We have a credit reporting system in Jamaica that captures data whenever you interface with banks, you have a credit card or all of that. And just generally, we have access to all of this user data, um, even around how people do banking transaction, that can form a more complete picture of how an entrepreneur will manage their finances. And we have a system which is private credit. So I might not know you well, but I know you run a business, right? I have seen you run a business for years. I might be, as a business person, I am more inclined to lend to you as a result of you being in an entrepreneurial ecosystem that I'm aware of, right? And that is what Esther Finance is tapping into. It is saying, okay, there are business people, there are young business people that every young business person also know is in the same trenches as them. Okay, what happens if we create a technology system that is able to allow Ricardo to give Akeem $50,000 for 3 months, and for Akeem to pay back Ricardo, but without Ricardo picking up the phone and calling Akeem about it. So Esther has provided a platform to do those transactions. So it is twofold. It is one, yes, the ability to venture funding, and venturing is a different side of our business. For example, we look at businesses all over the Caribbean now. We are trying to do things in Barbados. we're looking at partnerships on the venturing side. It's a different types of business. On Esther Finance, it's around how do we transform peer-to-peer transaction through private credit and use an ecosystem of entrepreneurs who know each other. Behind this camera is a Rain that I've known for years in business, right? If Orain come to me and say, I'm try to buy a camera, I know Orain for years to buy a camera, right? So my ability, if I have the capital to help Orain buy a camera, I'm more inclined to want to do that because it's a part of my entrepreneur. That is what we're trying to tap into when it comes on to peer-to-peer transaction and Esther Finance specifically. So it's not really sectorally specific. And yes, you could identify a group to say, okay, I'm a camera guy or whatever, but it's broader than that. It is how do we create an ecosystem in the Caribbean environment where instead of trying to look at companies like Sequoia or Y Combinator in San Francisco to save us, that we are actually backing each other and really supporting each other in the development of the ecosystem. Because what one of the things that we miss is the reason why Silicon Valley is the ecosystem that it is because you have all of these entrepreneurs who have successfully built businesses and exited those businesses, who understand what it takes to build and exit a business, going back in and actually lending assistance in the form of capital, in the form of technical assistance to other entrepreneurs. It's a self-reinforcing thing. When you have success stories that can reinvest back in the system, that's how the system that's how the organization grows. So the only way we can really grow the entrepreneurial success rate in Jamaica, the only is other entrepreneurs investing. So the simple answer to your question would be yes, but it is broader than that. It is broader than just supporting a creative. Because, I give you examples. We have, I know a lot of creatives. We have done business with a lot of creatives. We have creatives who have come to me and say they are doing X or Y. But remember, even if credit is private, capital preservation is the most important part of credit, right? So the ability to assess that you're lending to somebody who's going to use that funding in a diligent way. A lot of people, it's something that is not spoken about enough. When you take on money, when you take on outside money, you have an obligation for taking on that outside money. So the convenience that you have to lay back is less. Capital has taking on funding has a responsibility for that funding. And one of the things that we recognize is that education is an important part of the process. Because a lot of people think, oh, I have got money. Actually, for many businesses, taking on money is the most destructive part of the process, right? Not the most progressive part, the most destructive part, because you are now responsible for the deployment of other people capital.
Yep.
Capital has other needs. A man, if I have $10,000, I can use the $10,000 to buy some bag juice and sell it. I can use the $10,000 to buy a concert ticket to where I want to go. I can use the $10,000 to buy some stocks. I can use if I give you my $10,000 and say, I expect a return on the obligation now transfers to you. No, you have the obligation of giving my $10,000 plus whatever return you have guaranteed. So it is more than just, oh, I'm going to lend you. It is, how do we develop Esther as a system that educates, that reinforces community, that builds an ecosystem, that delivers at the, maybe not right now, maybe not 5 years from now, but 15 years from now, a thriving ecosystem where you have people who are actually venturing because they have probably done a couple peer-to-peer transactions already. They are being more willing to put money in behind a startup, behind a creative, behind that. So I'm kind of talking long on this point, but my intention behind Esther is one that is very long term. It is one that I recognize that will not immediately happen like tomorrow. It is, how do we build, starting with peer-to-peer. Maybe you will do a peer-to-peer transaction on the platform to start.
Right.
But after you have done a couple of those successfully, after you have lent in a managed way successfully, maybe then you will go out and start venturing, because it's all, you have to look at every stage of this process as a way of understanding how capital markets work, how taking on credit works, how lending and borrowing works, and then moving people up the value chain. Before an entrepreneur can raise a Series A, a Series B, can list on the stock market, can become a profitable business, there's all these stages. And when we communicate now, it's almost like we want to jump the stages. But you can't jump the stages. You have to have a blend. You have to have people who are commercial banks who are dealing with certain risk. You have to have venture people who are dealing with certain risk. You have to have people who are angel investors that are understanding and taking on certain risk. And then we have all of these people supporting and working in the ecosystem. Then the ecosystem grows. So it's really around, how do we ensure that capital flow in our entrepreneurial ecosystem here in the Caribbean, here in Jamaica, benefits from more firms like Point Global, who are taking on a more venture studio approach, who are taking on a more kind of broad-based approach. So how do we support entrepreneurship and ecosystems and creatives generally?
Yeah.
So you made quite a few mention of peer-to-peer lending, and it goes hand in hand with personal. So could you explain what peer-to-peer lending is for someone who may not know what it is, or they are aware of it and just need more information?
Peer-to-peer lending is a loan transaction between two peers. In our case, we are doing it over a technology platform that matches lenders and borrowers. So when you go onto the Esther platform and you register, you are entering a platform that we do. If you are going to use our product, you have to do an EKYC completion, so we know that you are the person you say you are. We're then using the technologies available, which is all of the large data sets that we have available to us to kind of make decisions about your behavior and your risk profile as a borrower. And then on the other side of that, we have persons who are private individuals and institutions who are sophisticated in their understanding of the risk involved in peer-to-peer transactions. And those persons are then evaluating your loan application and deciding whether or not this is something that they want to lend to.
Yeah.
So it is private individuals doing businesses with other private individuals through the Esther platform, technology platform that we have created. And we are using prevailing technology, big data, mobile data, EKYC, and user behavior trends through mobile, particularly, as well as credit reporting trends to make to give what we call an Eve score, an Esther score on this individual that is using the platform. And then private lenders, private individuals, sophisticated lenders that understand alternate, because peer-to-peer lending is not for everybody. It's for people who understand private. What the normal term you would hear is sophisticated investors. It's an alternate asset class. It's an alternate asset class. So with decentralized finance, you have many other asset class digitally that even people are buying NFTs. The digital frontier behavior is already in many economies, right? The Caribbean, there are many Caribbean people who are doing it because of their connections to the USR. We haven't developed that kind of alt capital, alt finance mindset fully. And we're not doing the educating of the population properly to kind of get them to understand what things like AI, what things like the large language models, what things like just the restructuring of global finance networks are going to be doing to countries and places like Jamaica. So yeah, I hope that answers.
So my next question would be, how do you believe Esther would support financial inclusion, not just in Jamaica, but like in the Caribbean?
So in 2016, I did the Young Leaders of the Americas program. And I remember one of the things that they talked about at that program is, what is your big, hairy, audacious goal? What is this big thing that you want to do that will keep you engaged and motivated? And I remember coming back from the program in the fellowship in 2016 and thinking to myself, what do I want for Point Global? Where do I want to see Point Global? What is this big, hairy, audacious goal that I want Point Global to actually attend to? And I spent a lot of time kind of thinking through that as a part of the program. And what I came up with is, I want to be able to affect 1 million business people positively in the Caribbean. 1 million emerging business people in the Caribbean. Now, we know the Caribbean is not that big. So the ability to do that would be transformative. The ability to, for 15, 20 years from now, somebody saying, okay, as a result of getting funding from Esther, I was able to build this. Or I did private credit peer-to-peer transactions before becoming an angel investor. I want to, for me, if I hear those stories, I would have been, I think that's the impact that I'd want to have. I'd want Point Global and Esther to be seen as institutions that were pillars of economic development from a entrepreneurship standpoint, from a supporting the ecosystem standpoint, from a supporting the Jamaican who wants to build a business standpoint. I, I, I spoke at an event, and some bankers was at the event sharing the stage with me. And I said to them that I really believe that a lot of the banking institutions that we see are going to go through fundamental changes. They don't believe me, and I keep saying it. Um, the world is changing. The capital markets are changing. Banking is changing. I was listening to Jim Morose deliver a lecture in Abu Dhabi on the state of finance. And one of the things that he said that was fundamental was that because of prevailing technologies, because of how people want finance to feel personal. They want it to be one-on-one because everybody's different. And the younger people, we have Adelaide being a summer intern, 10 years from now, given how pervasive technology is, maybe my generation will not demand it, but his generation would want a bank that knows exactly who he is and what is important to him. And he would want to do financial transactions because they're going to have AI. He's going to ask himself, why do I have to go? Why do I have to put cash check in this way? What if we don't transform our banking system, if we don't transform the way we support entrepreneurs, if we don't go to really understanding who the entrepreneurial person is, what is the problem they're solving, we will be disrupted. The firms that you see as the dominant firms in the Caribbean will be disrupted.
Yeah.
They'll be disrupted because it will become a commodity. And a Morgan Stanley, a JP Morgan, a Citigroup, those companies are also looking at these trends and they're going to take the market share that is here. If our institutions don't become more nimble, become more personal, become more humane in the way they interact with culture, it's only a couple of things can happen. So as the impact, we want to be one, we're going to be here for a long time,
Yeah.
not just a good time. But we want to really be transformative to the early stage funding space for entrepreneurs, to the early stage funding space for businesses. In
Yeah.
the same way, on one level we were able to do that on the marketing side, and still are able to do it on the marketing advisory side. So it's my big here audacious goal that I don't talk about a lot, but in the back of my head that kind of drives what I want to do is impacting 1 million businesses and the people who run them positively. But it's as simple as that.
What's your next big goal for Esther for next year?
We've been very fortunate in that we have been able to build out some international partnerships around technology specifically. We have been able to build out some local partnerships around things like data and how we use data. So we have some technology projects that we're running. We have built what we consider a very useful platform.
It is.
We see as first class in its use of things like cloud computing technologies and stuff like that. So we have some technology goals on there. We're going to build a matching engine. We're going to be able to do. I don't want to give away too much things.
Yes, yeah. Those of you kind of give me the squinty eye, like you better not.
Yeah, but
yeah,
we're going to be able to answer certain things around like trust.
yeah.
Like, how do I know that I'm doing business with this person? The technologies that we're going to be deploying on the Esther platform will be able to really say, okay, you're doing business with Javette Nixon, and you're going to be sure about that. So, on the technology side, through our relationship with Hashtag, we're doing a lot of work on that.
Yeah.
Amazon, we're doing a lot of work around building on their cloud infrastructure, and giving us the ability to scale rapidly, where that is concerned. So that's on the technology side. On the consumer side, in terms of the persons that we're trying to serve, one of the things that is there heavily focus for us is education. We believe if we do the education piece properly,
Yeah.
that eventually we kind of going to have this snowball effect where customers, as they do business with the platform, as they understand what we're doing, as they understand. So education, kind of ramping up how we do education well, how we tell our stories. This is the kind of start of that process. I think customers want to know what is behind the scenes and what is being built. So this is a part of that. But really just to be useful to the ecosystem. To we're not we're pretty small right now. We can't we all fix everybody. We can't fund everybody. We have the amount of people who come on the platform. We're actually matching actual funding. Really a small amount of those people, like a tiny amount. But user interaction with the platform is important. Building a user base, building our data sets, building on our assumptions are important. So those are the things we're planning on doing. I having run and started businesses in Jamaica, I know how difficult it is to build something. I know how difficult it is to build something that is long term in nature. I know how distracted as a business person somebody can get because of how difficult it is. And if you're going to build something to last, which is what Point is about, what Esther is about, it's really about building something that is a very long term project as a business. For me, as an entrepreneur, Esther takes on the same framing. I expect this to be doing this for a very long time. And just to be useful to the ecosystem. And if we build slowly, I was watching this thing yesterday that was talking about compounding interest around people don't understand the value of compounding. And it's the same thing. Compounding even in the effort that you put in. Right? Meaning if you decide to just read one page of a book every day, eventually go and read out the book. Right? So it's the same approach I want to take around Esther. We have absolutely no intention of trying to run down everybody. We have absolutely no intention of trying to prove anything to anybody. We want to be absolutely focused on the customers and who actually use the platform.
Yeah.
We also want to be absolutely focused on their education to say, okay, what is this transaction? How is this transaction work? What is the value of this transaction? If we're absolutely focused on those things, we'll grow. And that's what it's about.
So speaking of growth, in the coming future, what kind of partners are you looking for and how can people get involved with Esther Finance or Esther Group overall?
Right. So in terms of let me address the get involved with Esther first. We're on socials, we're on our website. Is the primary kind of entry point. This kind of platform model that we're doing. So we're building a pretty rigorous. This can't be considered our website anymore. It has to be considered a platform.
It is.
So that is the primary entry point. So if they go to www.estherfinance.com or esthergroup.co, they'll be able to connect with us. LinkedIn, whatever. All of those social platforms we're on. So that's an easy way to reach us. But also we're going to digital housing is something Point Global has did for 10 years. We kind of took a break over the last 2 years, but in November we're doing digital housing again, and it's going to be kind of a joint venture between Esther and Point Global. And again, it's again raising the level of education around what we're doing. So that's kind of one way people can get involved. In terms of who are we looking to partner with? Other financial institutions, obviously. They are currently the largest purveyors of credit, commercial banks, credit unions, all small financial microcredit institutions. We encourage them to use our platform as well, and we're happy to have them on the platform. We think that primarily a large portion of ultimate lending that is done on the platform will be done at an institutional level. Once the institution realize the technology and the vetting and the data that is behind understanding who is on the platform. I think a lot of the banking institutions will see the platform as something that they want to becoming to look at customers that are looking for credit. So we want to start those partners with those partners. Um, but also people who just understand alternate credit. People who understand private credit. The private credit market in the US has grown 34% last year. It's projected to grow even more this year. We see private credit in Europe is exploding. Europe is kind of leading the way when it comes down to private credit transaction. So we want to be a part of that renaissance. We want to be a part of that renaissance around private credit, around people who understand alternative financing and are willing to provide alternative financing through peer-to-peer transaction of a secure platform.
Okay, great. So, lastly, we're on the last question now. So, if someone is still on the edge about Esther, whether they're a lender or a borrower, what would you want them to know about the platform?
I'd want to know that security and legal compliance and operating with a clear understanding of KYC and AML compliance is at the root of our platform. I'd want them to understand that we're building something that is built on global technology. We have built our stack on AWS. We're not afraid to say that. It's a platform that has been robust. We have strong technology partners that have built on this before, and we're working with them. So our technology platform is very strong. And I see Esther, and this might be sound outlandish to some people. I see Point Global and Esther as the most important little firm in the Caribbean. And that's what I want, and we're going to be here for a long time. So what I would encourage them to do is look at what we're doing, seek to understand what we're doing, understand the space that we're seeking to disrupt. But ultimately, I think we'll be the game in town.
Well, thank you so much, and welcome to Esther.
No. This is a longer conversation that I want, but thanks to the team and for this conversation. I think it's necessary.
Yeah.
I've kind of taken the approach of you can be out there making a lot of noise about what we're building, or we can just put our head down, do the work, and the work speaks for itself. Maybe there's going to be a time to kind of talk about all of these little things that we're doing around Esther, around digital housing, around how we're working with all around the Caribbean and just everything that we are involved in. But I've always been of the view that the work is more important than the talk. So yeah, that's kind of what I'm about. That's what we're about. Yeah. So thanks, guys. I appreciate it.